Welcome to this explainer on the evolution of human appetite. To kick things off, I want you to picture a scene you know intimately well. Your house at night. You're awake, the lights are off, the whole place is just completely silent. And you are walking through the pitch black, heading straight toward the kitchen. So, you open the fridge, and that little glowing box lights up a can of soda, maybe some leftover pizza, or some yogurt. But here's the thing. Your stomach isn't growling. You aren't actually hungry. Yet you are being completely driven by this invisible, ancient urge to just consume. To understand exactly why you're standing there in the dark, craving a midnight snack, we have to look back into that darkness.
We have to travel back 3 million years, because the real reason for your late-night hunger is far darker than you might think. Deep inside caves around the world, scientists have found proof that fundamentally rewrites the entire story of our species.
Let's shatter a massive myth right off the bat. Your earliest ancestors, they were not the apex predators of the savanna. No way. They were terrified scavengers. When a lion brought down an antelope, the lion ate the best parts. Then the hyenas moved in. And our ancestors, they hid in the shadows, absolutely paralyzed by the fear of those nocturnal predators lurking in the dark, creeping out only when it was finally safe to claim the scraps. And what was left for us were just the thickest leg bones. Bones that were too dense even for hyena jaws to crush. But early humans had hands that could grip a rock. Using crude stone flakes, what we call Oldowan tools, they smashed those bones open. Inside was the marrow. Imagine them scooping out the slick, gray, dripping raw fat with their fingers and eating it in an absolute rush. It was a brutal, bloody feast.
But the ultimate prize? The skull. They cracked them wide open for the brains, securing almost a pound of solid fat. That is literally the most calorie-dense food in nature. For an ancestor who was barely surviving, it was an absolute jackpot. And this is exactly why your biology is wired to hoard fat like treasure today. Your body, deep down, still remembers the starvation.
So, for millions of years, we chewed raw marrow and crunched on thumb-sized beetles in the dark. But roughly 1 million years ago, in places like Wonderwar Cave in South Africa, everything changed. We captured fire. Suddenly, we had a weapon against the dark, and more importantly, a way to entirely change our food.
Think of it this way. Fire meant cooking, and cooking is basically pre-digestion. See, raw meat and tough roots force your gut to do hours and hours of exhausting chemical work. But you drop a bone in the embers, the food breaks down before it even enters your mouth. You get to extract the maximum amount of calories, pretty much instantly.
Because we no longer needed these massive, energy-draining digestive systems, human guts actually shrank. That freed up massive amounts of energy, and it all went straight to one place, the brain. Your brain is a greedy machine, folks. It's only about 2% of your body weight, but it burns a whopping 20% of your calories. You just cannot run that machine on raw leaves. Cooking literally gave us our minds.
Bigger brains demanded a much bigger menu. By 300,000 years ago, we were hunting mammoth, bison, and gathering wild honey. Even today, the Hadza tribe in Tanzania will endure hundreds of brutal bee stings, just climbing dangerous trees to get honey. Why do they do it? Because absolutely nothing else in nature packs that many calories into a single bite.
And this perfectly explains your modern cravings. Your brain is hardwired to hunt for sugar, because back then, sugar meant instant survival fuel. Modern food companies have brilliantly weaponized that ancient signal. I mean, to your brain, a glazed donut and a wild honeycomb are the exact same thing. Soda, cereal, bread, they are literally just ancient sugar signals wearing a different costume to trick you into storing fat.
But sugar wasn't our only compulsion. Taking down a single mammoth brought a tribe weeks of dense meat protein. That one massive kill saved hundreds of hours of painstaking foraging in the dangerous wild. And that saved time? That became the very foundation of human culture. It gave us time to build tools, raise children, and tell stories around the safety of the fire.
But here is where it gets strange. Our endless craving for calories took us to some incredibly dark places. In England's Gough's Cave, researchers found 14,700-year-old human bones. They had been meticulously cleaned with stone tools. The faces were removed, the tops of the skulls were literally shaped into drinking cups. The arm bones were cracked open for marrow, exactly the same way we treated the antelope.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, this had to be a desperate act of starvation, right? Well, the math says otherwise. A human body provides about 125,000 calories, but a mammoth, that offers 3 million. And the cave was already filled with the remains of horses and deer, so there was plenty of animal meat available.
So, cannibalism wasn't an act of desperation. Humans weren't efficient food, they were a choice. One human forearm bone at Gough's Cave was meticulously carved with this bizarre zigzag pattern right after the meat was stripped. It was a dark ritual. And the craziest part? It wasn't isolated. We found the exact same thing across Germany, France, Spain, and Croatia. But what came next is honestly even more unsettling. Our ancestors didn't just eat fresh meat. When hunters killed more than they could eat, they actually buried the excess flesh in caves or cold streams. They'd return months later, By then, the meat was reeking of decay, totally crawling with maggots. And you know what? They ate it anyway.
In fact, they actually preferred the rotting meat. Bacteria broke it down, making it much easier to digest and added vital B vitamins. So the next time you enjoy a nice slice of cheese, some sourdough bread, a cold beer, or soy sauce, just remember this: every fermented food you love is just controlled rot. Your refined taste didn't start in a pristine, modern dairy. It literally evolved from eating decaying flesh 100,000 years ago.
Which brings us right back to your quiet, dark kitchen. Your body doesn't understand what a grocery store is. When you stand in the dark at midnight, your brain is quietly panicking. You are running a 3 million-year-old survival program demanding you consume calories now, because that ancient fear of the dark and the terrifying starvation that lurked in it is still deeply encoded right there in your DNA. The terrifying world this software was built for is completely gone. Drop a modern human into the year 50,000 BC and they would be dead in days, totally unable to find the hidden calories. But drop an ancient human into your modern kitchen, they would think they were standing inside a god's pantry. Just unimaginable wealth, perfectly sealed in little metal boxes.
So really think about that the next time you mindlessly reach into the fridge in the dead of night. For 3 million years, almost every human who ever lived was hungry, cold, and terrified of what was hiding out there in the dark. Look around your home tonight and ask yourself, are you the very first one who isn't? And is your ancient brain finally ready to let that fear go?